that screen.
All right, here we go. Getting things going here on our Tuesday morning. Gonna let a few more people in. Good to see everybody. Awesome. Carolyn, hello. Marianne, hello. Awesome. So good to see everybody. Hi, Sharon. Dave, good to see you. Hope everybody had a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Roseanne, good to see you. So I just sent a message out to Skip to see if anybody would be interested in doing a recap next week on Coffee Connection. So don't know if he's going to reach out, but I asked, maybe. If you're available, that would be excellent. It was such a good event. So good. Hey, Siobhan, how are you? Awesome. Good to see her. Awesome.
Just give me 1 second, Desi. I have to sort out children's issues here.
Okay. So, that's the thing about the Coffee Connection. We're all real people working in the industry. And so I love that about it is it's very family oriented. We're low key, have a good time, networking. Yes, I agree, Carolyn. So with that, let's go ahead and put our information into the chat because it is all about networking. And so we want to reach out to each other. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing in the industry, how you are using drones, or maybe you're doing something else in the industry. And also, I want to remind everybody that this is live on social media. It's going out also on YouTube. And so we'll try to monitor the chat and answer any questions as they come in. And the questions that come in through social media will be forwarded to me. And if we don't get to them today, we definitely will do a follow-up. So with that, I am actually, I see our spotlight speaker is here. I'm thinking he's good to go. Hello. Okay.
Good to
So
go.
awesome. I'm gonna let Roseanne back in here because she was in a second ago and looks
Just
like
on the right-hand side of my screen here, all the neighbors' children are fighting over bikes and scooters, and I'm ignoring them.
well, we can't hear them.
They keep calling to the door, and I'm like, "Go away! I'm busy."
Yeah. That just makes it real. So, well, I'm super excited because I have the guest speaker here coming in from Dublin. And I'm assuming you're in Dublin right now, but
I'm
he's
at home.
here to
Yes.
share with us. And he is the founder of Drone Space Ltd. I'm going to give you all the uh, information regarding the company, but they deliver products, ideas, and consulting, and they're exploring the future development of UAV ecosystem, which is awesome. And I can't wait to hear more about it. So we have Ian Kiely here with us, and I'm going to switch over and make a spotlight for everyone, Ian. All right.
Okie dokie.
All right. So there you are, big and ready for everybody. So tell us, first of all, I know you have some slide deck prepared and all that, but tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing in the industry.
Well, I'm at this a very, very long time. I'm flying for about 11 years now. I've done quite a bit of consultancy. Of late, I've been doing a lot of teaching, scooping up all the people that are breaking the law under the new legislation. I'll talk a bit about that later on a very large scale. I've had about 200 students so far this year. And I think I've done a deal. I'm probably going to have another 200 before the year's out. I'm trying to build a vertiport in my hometown. I've actually been given a piece of land by the state to see if I can build one there as initially as a test site. So they said I can have it for 6 months. And I was in Germany a few weeks ago and had dinner with a company that builds vertiports, and they're looking for a site to build one in Ireland. So that looks promising. And ultimately, the country Wales is only 100 kilometers from here. So ultimately, I'd like to connect the two countries. So Ireland, Dublin to Wales. But first off, I want to build a vertiport between my house and my ex-wife's house. so that I don't have to drive so much over to pick up my daughter on a regular basis.
There you
Uh,
go.
I have to drive right through Dublin city traffic, and it's pain in my rear end. So yeah, I'm doing all sorts of lots of interesting things and a bit of government consultancy as well. And I've been working with the European Space Agency since 2018.
Oh,
So
well, I'm excited to see how collaboration and global networking and all that is coming together. So, do you want to kick it off with your presentation? You have a slide deck that you wanted to
sure,
share?
I'm just gonna I was gonna cover a couple of different things if I can work out how to use my new computer properly.
Okay.
Now, if I choose that one, can you just see? Do you just see the big screen?
Give it a sec. It's perfect.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yes.
You don't
Dave,
check out
give us
my
thumbs up.
moving logo. Look, check that out. How cool is that? Right.
Oh,
One of my guys made that for me. It's very fancy. So initially, I'm going to talk a bit about what's going on. How do I move here? This new computer is not help. Oh, there we go. There we go. So that's myself and herself from South Africa. I don't know if she's on the call. So this time last year, Desi, when you were in Dublin, we visited the Mana site. In the top right-hand corner there on the screen, those two green circles are the area that's been serviced by this takeoff and landing site here on the screen. And a couple of weeks ago, the drone delivery company announced that all these red circles will be areas that are serviced in the next 6 months. So they're going to try and go from servicing 100,000 people to 1 million people with door-to-door drone delivery from supermarkets, pizzerias, stuff like that. So we're quite a bit ahead of other countries, but it's created a bit of a problem, actually a very large problem. So the legislation they used to do drone testing deliveries in that area of Dublin has accidentally privatized the airspace. So if people now that's actually Class G airspace, and if people want to fly in Class G airspace, they now need to put in an application through air traffic control. So the company has effectively privatized part of Dublin. And the fear amongst drone professional operators is that the rest of Dublin's airspace will become privatized. So long term, so just to give you an idea, this is the airspace on the bottom right-hand corner is the airspace map of Dublin under 400 feet. That area there is those two green circles. But now they're going to cover most of Dublin. And 42% of the Irish population lives in Dublin. So there's almost 2 million people in that catchment area who will all now not be allowed to fly a drone if they continue under the existing legislation. So this has spurred the growth of new user groups representing themselves to the government. Some of the old user groups have almost completely died away. So long term, I don't know how they're going to play it out, but I want to build my vertiport just here, which is outside of their control zone. So selfishly, I think it'll be okay for me temporarily. So that's kind of what's going on in relation to drone delivery. They're also delivering in Texas. They're partnered with Wing, so which is Google. So in other parts of Dublin, down around here, Google are operating in Class G airspace doing deliveries for hospitals. But effectively, anywhere Mana drone goes, Google delivery goes, and they try and copy and repeat what Mana are doing. So I don't know if they're going to survive. So just moving on there a bit. So some things that I've been working on, and I've tried to make this, I know a lot of people dial in from the US. So here in Ireland, here in Europe, it's against the law to deliver a liquid payload from an aerial vehicle. And that's because most of our farms are quite small and all the bees were getting killed off. So you need special permission from the EU and special permission from the Department of Agriculture to do drone spraying. Now, the US are way ahead of us in this area, and they're managing grapes and all sorts of different crops. So this here is my cousin's glass house, and you can see it from space. It's 13 acres. It's quite substantial. And if you can see, there's kind of a green hue on the glass. And since we've managed to eradicate acid rain, the green buildup is building up on glass houses all over Ireland, and they're looking for ways to resolve it. So it costs 3,000. Oh, sorry, touching that too gently. Oh, go back. It costs 3,000 euros per acre to clean the glass. But we worked out that with a drone, so if you just cleaned his 13 acres, we can buy a drone, train somebody, and insure them and do the job cheaper than it costs for one clean. So we, on behalf of my cousin, who's driving me nuts about it, we're making a presentation to the government to allow him spray from a drone under controlled circumstances onto his glass. But instead of spraying a chemical, we want to spray a biocide, which basically eats the green algae that's building up on the glass. I think that we are still going to be several years away from it, though, because it's going to create an influx of people wanting to do it, and you're going to get all sorts of cowboys and people messing around. So that's kind of where drone spraying is in Ireland. This is the actual drone we were testing. I think it weighs about 60 kilos. It's half the size of the Jeep. So I suggested that if we buy the old DJI smaller spraying drone, it would come in with 25 kilos and be allowed to be used in the open category. The problem is DJI has discontinued making their small sprayer drone. So I think that we're going to have a few more stumbling blocks of legislation to cross before we get to it. But it's at the end, or if anybody wants to put their hand up and ask a question as we go along, I'm quite happy to answer questions, by the way, if any of this resonates with what's going on in your country.
Oh, love to hear from people, and feel free to put information into the chat if you have questions there. Like I said, it's all about networking. So Ian, I do have a question.
Yes.
So when we're talking about ag spray and such like that, do you need a specific certification for spraying chemicals there in Dublin or Ireland?
So anywhere in Europe, to spray a liquid payload from any aerial vehicle, you need special permission. So our farms generally tend to be quite narrow and small. And when they were crop spraying, do you see here, right? All the fields are broken up with ditches that have wildlife living in them, and all the wildlife was being killed. All the bees were being wiped out. It was a big, big problem. So they banned flying drones and aerial vehicle. Hang on one second. Yes, honey. Sorry, all the children are back at my door. 1 second.
Okay.
Throw down to Kula.
This is why he was thinking he wants that vertiport, right?
Sorry. There's a door right here, and the children are looking at me. So they're all like, sorry about that. Now, you all know, you've all got kids or dealt with it. So, so the EU years ago banned aerial spraying. But now with the introduction of drone spraying, and it's come a long way, the downforce controls where the spray is going, and you're much closer to the crop. So Irish companies and companies all across Europe are putting in for special permission. So they're going to have to change the legislation to allow it to happen. The problem is none of the chemicals are recognized because there's been no previous spraying. You can't get the chemicals recognized to spray from the drone. So the Irish Aviation Authority don't want to speak to you until you have the chemicals organized. And because it's above 25 kg, you would need to have a specific category license and probably a SORA to operate a drone of that size. So there's many, many, many layers of issues and too many government departments involved for it to happen at a speedy pace.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Will I move on from that?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm monitoring our chat.
So this is the course that I set up about 18 months ago. I thought it would be interesting to so all these companies are out there breaking the law, and they don't realize, and many of them are being lied to by people supplying them with drone services. So a state agency called SkillsNet approached me and said, look, would you be interested in running a course, and we'll pay 50% of the fee. So I charge 300 euros per person, but the state pays 50% of that, which is 150 euros. And we're effectively scooping up all the industries that were prolifically breaking the law flying drones. So I started out working with solar PV companies and a few photography companies and some architecture. But then the Property Managers Association of Ireland and I did a deal where they would advertise it, and they want to get CPD points, continuous professional development. And they put out an ad, and I had 40 people apply for the course within the first 2 days. And then I did another, they did another ad, and I bet another 40 people. So that was very busy. And these are all the areas I was trying to hit. So I'm teaching this course on average at least 1 day a week, sometimes two. I bring them in the morning. I get them registered as a hobbyist. I teach them the legislation. We have lunch. We go out and fly for an hour or two, and I teach them how to get rid of all their bad habits. And then we spend an hour doing a roadmap of development and insurance for each person in the afternoon. So with that, I did a deal with the forestry department, and we closed the deal on a Tuesday to advertise on the Friday. The ad went out on the Thursday, and this is only a couple of weeks ago. And on that Sunday night, we had the biggest storm in recorded history, and Ireland lost 20% of its forestry in one night. It's absolutely catastrophic for the Irish forestry industry, for our environment. If we continue planting at the current rate, it will take us 20 years to get back to where we were. And there's absolute chaos. And it also, half the country had no electricity for a couple of days. Some people had no electricity for 3 weeks because of it. And the forest took down all the power lines. So immediately I was overwhelmed by forestry companies looking to train staff. And so I was supplying drones training. I've actually been out doing some of the work for them. So I've been very, very busy with this little course that I thought might occasionally have a full class. I've basically spent the whole January, February, March just teaching, which has been really good, and it pays really, really well. And because the state are paying, you get paid within a few days, which are all very good things for small businesses. So the uptake in drones, or in the legal use of drones, has really improved. And under our current legislation, we really needed it. A lot of the registered drone companies were being undermined by people operating illegally, and undercutting the costs significantly. So off the back of that, I'm very close to doing a deal with Engineers Ireland. They have 37,000 members. So I believe I will spend most of next year training them 1 day a week. So I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah, congratulations. Yes.
Thank you. So some of the other projects I'm working on, and these here are two different sites. They're run by a construction company called BAM. So I go every month and I photograph the site and send their head office the information. That's a very good project. It's very easy. They're very near my house. But this here was me. That's me in the orange jacket standing on that helipad. If you notice, the helipad has an X on it. It's not an official helipad yet. So I was the first person to officially take off from that new helipad. It's sitting on the roof of a hospital that has cost 3 billion euros to date to build. There is murder over the hospital. I've been scanning it for about 2 years. The original budget was 1 billion euros, and now they've spent 3 already, and the hospital's still not open. So I'm delighted from my perspective that I'm still getting paid to do drone work on it. But it's massively behind budget, and it's still not finished yet. It's almost finished. So it was really weird. That building is considerably bigger than it looks. There's another 4 or 5 stories underground. And myself and the 2 people with me were the only people in the entire hospital the other night. Patrick's weekend, everybody took the weekend off. So we actually tested the lights and the landing systems for the landing pad, which was, I'd never done that before. So that was a very interesting project. That was last week. But this is generally just construction work. I should have said about the just on the last slide about teaching. I've actually been attending a course at night called Drones and Construction, and I wanted to learn more about the construction end of it. But the lecturer has now decided that he's going to retire next year, and they've actually the university has invited me to come and do the lectures next year. So I haven't accepted yet, but it looks likely that I'm going to have a university post next year. 11 years ago, before I got into drones, I never imagined that I would attend university. I have lots of certificates and stuff, but I have no degree, and now I'm probably going to be lecturing that course next year. So I feel like that's a little bit of an ego boost. And ironically, my brother attended the university that I'm going to be lecturing in, and he was on the board of management there. And then no connection. I get offered a job there. He's gone a few years, so it's very cool. I never thought I'd be lecturing in university, so I'm very happy about that.
Isn't that just so true of just the industry? You know, you look back at where you're starting and to see where the industry as a whole and each individual is now. It is just so exciting.
For
Yep.
sure. And the thing is, like, I got
Like,
into it very, very early. And I probably am a unique position to be able to do lecturing. I'm sure there are other people here as well. But 10 years from now, when people are graduating with degrees and postdoctorates and whatnot, they wouldn't be interested in somebody like me lecturing, even though I probably know more or as much as them, just from purely the experience of it. So a couple of other jobs that I've been doing. I'm going to finish these two jobs next week. This is a laneway system that runs through what used to be a very rough neighborhood. And a couple of months ago, this laneway was a broken down wreck. So the council have been rebuilding it, and actually now it's all been painted, and they've put children's play equipment the whole way along it. And they're opening it officially next week. So I've actually been monitoring each step of the development, and we're going to make a video out of that. And also here, I should have used a bigger picture in this area. They're trying to close housing estates to make them more useful for children right across the country. So previously, housing estates that you could drive through, they're blocking one end and they're converting the housing estates into play areas. So I've been monitoring a few of those around the city. And in 2 weeks' time, we're going to start making videos that will be published to try and encourage other housing estates to close their roads and go carless. So you'll be able to come in and park, but you won't be allowed to drive through. And all the new housing estates are being built that way. So they're retrofitting housing estates to remove antisocial behavior and improve locality. So I kind of fell into that one by accident. So
Ian,
down
I have a
here.
question.
So I go ahead if you have a question.
Sorry to interrupt, but Dave has his hand up. He did have a
Oh yeah,
question.
go for it.
I didn't want it to get too far away.
Hi Dave, go for it.
Thanks, Ian. So I lead a not-for-profit, and we've become expert over the last 6 years in drone regulations. And I cannot imagine there in the States there being a market for the education that you're providing. I'm delighted that you're doing what you're doing, but I can't. And so I'm wondering, what's the draw, what's the hook, what's the interest in, because if we said, well, we could tell, pick a demographic: academia, public safety, industry, real estate, inspection. They effectively, in the United States, mostly they could care less in terms of knowing. And then if they really get into it, they'll just figure it out, get on the internet, and done. So I cannot envision anyone taking a class, a face-to-face training for this type of background. How did you break that code?
Well, there's a few things. One, we're a very small country. So having access to the Irish Aviation Authority and other industries is relatively easy compared to, say, the US. But when the EU legislation came in, the government across the EU, they've started taking it very seriously. And there have been a few prosecutions. So one guy was screwing around at Dublin Airport with a drone, and he nearly took down an aircraft, but they caught him. And in the EU, if you interfere with an aircraft in flight, it's an automatic 20 years in prison. So this guy is going to jail for life. So that was one hook. Now, because they closed the airport, Dublin is the only airport in the world that I know of that's allowed capture drones. So all of this has been very prevalent in the media. So when they asked me to develop a course, I thought about all of the different industries that are probably breaking the law. And we knew that property was one of them. So I reached out to the head of the property association. Now, it took me 3 people before I got to the right person. And I said, look, the opinion of the drone industry is that you're the most prolific rule breakers. So we're going to give you guys an opportunity to spend a day for 150 euros which is less than $200, that we will take them from zero and have them a functional drone operator by the afternoon, but with a hobby license. And if they want to go and get insurance and take the next step up from hobbyist, that's up to themselves, but we'll show them how to do that. And the uptake was absolutely huge. So a lot of drone people that were using a drone, say, to photograph houses and stuff, they suspected they were breaking the law, but now the prosecutions are starting to take place. They've decided to kind of bring themselves back into the fold. But again, in Ireland, it's like our entire population is 5 million people. 20 or 40 something percent of those people live in one city. And our media, you've got millions of media outlets compared to ourselves. So it's relatively easy to get the word out that, look, you guys are breaking the law. Does that answer your question, Dave?
Yeah, it does. It does completely. Yeah, our recreational population is about 2 million in the States, and enforcement is, hit and miss with, the odd scapegoat, but only for extraordinarily egregious activity. So it explains it completely, and it makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, no, like a couple of layers that are like Dublin Airport has a drone tracking system, and they're taking note of all the people that be breaking the law. And Dublin City Council are now using a tracking system to gauge how many people are breaking the law. And if you are producing nefarious footage and putting it on the internet, you're getting a phone call from the Irish Aviation Authority going, we know who you are, we know what your handle is, and we're giving you a slap on the wrist now, but if we catch you again, we won't. And the remote identification is starting to work here-ish. So the entire police force of Ireland were issued with a new type of telephone, and the new telephone can read remote identification from drones. So if there is a drone with no identification, when they hold their phone up, they know that that drone is operating outside of the legal framework. So there's different layers to it. I'm quite happy if you want to reach out to me and if you want to have a detailed chat in relation to that. I'm quite happy to Dave. Desi, you might put my email address into the chat, would you? Please.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So just looking at some of the other projects I'm working on. So this here is on the top left is me and my local chamber council so this council covers about a third of Dublin. So they service about maybe 1 million people. One of my siblings ran for that council years ago and wasn't elected by 100 votes. And when I put this photo online of me in the chamber, all of his political buddies were sending me joke notes going, well, at least one of your family got into the chamber. And we were just stuck for a classroom for the day. So it was quite interesting in my own local chamber, giving a lecture and consulting for my local council. I'm trying to help them protect their airspace. So on the right here, there's a pier that's near my house. It's 200 years old. And we've been monitoring that pier now. It was falling apart. It needed millions and millions in repairs. So we now photograph the pier maybe twice a year. And we gauge where the rocks are and where new cracks are appearing. And it's saved a huge amount of maintenance on the pier. So as a spin-off of that, down here in the right-hand side, I just want to move something on my screen here. This is a section of that harbour, and we flew a drone over it and we built an orthomosaic, but then we built a digital twin of the entire harbour. And the harbour was failing as a business. Now it used to be the largest man-made harbour in Europe. It's very, very substantial, and it was built by the British to protect British soldiers from getting drowned in storms, and to keep the Irish in check. So this section of pier here is actually in front of this harbour area, and that's where we're going to try and build our vertiport. So we'll be able to take off over water, access a huge amount of Dublin. Dublin is kind of like a C shape with it, so we'll be able to access much of Dublin without actually traveling over people. So and uninvolved persons. So they're the kind of projects that I've been doing for years, but I'm now starting to build up a library of those projects where every month or every 6 months you're going to have a job, and a lot of them are state paid, so you're guaranteed to get paid, which is for a small business very good. So many of you may or may not know that I enjoy moderating conferences. They had an aviation conference. So here in Ireland, we have a housing crisis, and it's virtually impossible to attract people from abroad to come to Ireland to work. So with baggage handling issues, we don't have enough air traffic controllers. We basically don't have enough. And Ireland is one of the largest aviation countries in the world per capita. One in every two leased aircraft in the world is leased through Dublin, and one in every five aircraft in the world is registered here. So our aviation industry is colossal. We even have areas for aviation development that are tax-free. So if you go to that part of the world in Shannon, in the center of Ireland, you don't have to pay taxes on the money you're making. So they've started now doing this event called AvCon. The first year was recently, and they attracted 6,000 visitors, but they turned over the Irish Aviation Military Base for the conference. So it was very weird because usually it's not open to the general public. And this is me here joking around with the chief of the Irish Armed Forces. I knew him when he was a lowly soldier. A very nice guy, and I hadn't seen him in a few years. And when I met him on stage, we were kind of joking, going, "You both come up in the world." In the same day, I cornered the Minister for Transport, who I'm actually friendly with, and I was trying to get him to take me for a spin out in the helicopter, which they wouldn't allow me to do. But the best bit of the day was Ireland was the first country in the world to have drone legislation. And I've been at this a very long time, and I was one of the first people to take the drone test for the legislation. But when they started publishing the actual drone licenses, mine was at the top of the pile. So I was issued the very first drone license in the world, official drone license in the world. So at the event, I donated the license to the Shannon Aviation Museum so that it would be protected forevermore. I'd kept the original in the envelope it came in, so the receipt, the credit card receipt and everything was with it. So they're going to create a little frame for me in the Aviation Museum and protect that first license forevermore, which I thought was pretty interesting for being such a large aviation country. And I mean, my daughter, when I die, would have just dumped out all my old paperwork and it would have disappeared. So now it's protected.
Wow.
And sorry, I've also been asked to moderate that conference next year, and they're hoping to increase it to 12,000 people. So I'm looking forward to that. So then recently, one of our women in drones gave me a ticket to a conference in Germany, and I attended the European Drone Forum in Germany, and I had the most amazing time. I got up and spoke on stage. In fact, I think I got a bit carried away. I told a few jokes, and suddenly everybody wanted to connect with me. But I forgot how, the US is a very big piece of land, and Europe is kind of similar in size. And unless you're traveling on a regular basis, you forget how big the drone network across Europe has become. And it really reminded me. So Exponential came to Europe. It was the first year here. I believe Exponential is an American or a US event. So they said they're going to do another one.
Houston.
Say that again, sorry?
Coming up soon in Houston in May.
Coming up soon in Houston. Well, they ran a brilliant event in Dusseldorf in Germany, I have to say. I was there so I actually traveled I'm building a consortium of drone people with a Dutch institution. We want to increase the amount of drone flying in ports across Europe. So we met in Germany, and all the other stakeholders flew to Germany to meet with us. So I actually spent a week there. So it was very, very good. So thank you, US, for sending us Exponential. It was a very good event. Just before Christmas, there was the World Drone Defense Summit. Oh, I don't know what's going on there. My computer's acting a bit weird. Sorry. On the right-hand side, there was the World Drone Defense Summit and the Air Taxi World Congress were held together in the same building, and I ended up moderating both of them. So on the last morning, we were doing demos, and I actually got caught by the aviation authority trying to fly that passenger drone without permission. I got a slap on the hand. I was saying that technically speaking, we're indoors, so the legislation doesn't apply. And the head of safety walked in and they were measuring me. And he looked at me and says, "I know what you're doing." And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he goes, you're going to try and fly that, aren't you? And I was like, no, definitely not. And he said, if you kill yourself flying that, I'll be in trouble. But if you survive it, you'll be in trouble. So in the end, he made me not fly it. But I was very, very close to taking that for a spin inside the hangar. Although I would prefer to do it outside. And then we took everybody outside and we did some demonstrations and we flew some pretty big craft. So it's a very interesting event. The company that owns the World Drone Defense Summit and the Air Taxi World Congress is actually going into liquidation this week. I still haven't been paid. So there is an opportunity for an Air Taxi World Congress in Europe if anybody has an interest in running an event or bringing one. Both events were successful events. It was just poorly managed by the CEO of the company running them. He tried to go too big too quick. So if anybody is interested in kicking around an idea, I'm trying to attract somebody to do a World Defence Summit here in Ireland. So if anybody's interested in getting involved in that, please reach out or throw together some suggestions and send me an email. So this is so just to give you an idea, just here, am I on the right part of the port? Sorry. Just here is the area that, can you see my mouse moving there? Desi, can you see that? Yeah. So that's where we're going to try and do a test port for the passenger or for the vertiport. We're going to close off this section of the harbor. At the moment, this area of the harbor is not being used. So we've got a safety case here. And this is the other side of, or sorry, this down here is a port in the south of Ireland. So we're trying to get all the ports to use drones a lot more for ship to shore work and for inspecting turbines. But then I'd like to connect the ports by drone and using the water as a cover area. So this port on the top here is about 120 kilometers from this port. So if we can eventually work out a safety case of connecting those two ports, then we can cross the Irish Sea and connect ourselves to Wales. So this is part of a wider Northwestern Europe have a fund that has 13 million euros left in it that has to be spent by the end of the summer. So we've built a consortium and we're going to apply for a very large portion of that. And I had to put in, this young man here I was teaching in my old high school. And every year I get loads of moms and dads when the 16-year-olds have to go out and find work experience, and moms and dads ring me and go, will you take my little Johnny in for some work experience? And I always say no, because one, they're very young, and two, they should be asking me themselves. So I was teaching in my own high school, and that night, this young man here, James, wrote to me and gave me a list of reasons why he thought he should come work for me. So I gave him a job and I took him with me, and he's only 16, but he looks like a grown man. So I actually took him to meetings with the Irish Aviation Authority, and they kept asking for his opinion in meetings, thinking he was an employee, not a young man. So he had a great time and I learned loads, and it was a very, very successful week. So give people an opportunity, these young lads. So he actually changed what he wants to do in college, in university, and he's going to start working towards becoming an aviation management consultant, which I'm very happy to have helped him. So that's kind of a brief overlay of what I'm up to at the moment. I'm quite happy to answer questions or just have a general chat. Desi, do you want to get started there?
Well, that was fantastic. We actually have so many comments of just how impressive everything is and all that you are doing. And so,
oh wow, yeah. Sorry, I couldn't see the chats there. Think of that.
So, very excited to see all the progress that you're making and such like that. And so actually, what I'd like to actually start with is you're so knowledgeable in the rules and regulations and such like that. Can you share with us your perspective of some of the hurdles that you foresee in the future and maybe some of the progresses that you've made?
Happy to do that. I'll go through the questions in a few minutes as well. So I'm of the opinion, I've been of the opinion for about 6 years that hobbyist drones are going to be stopped from flying anywhere in Europe except designated areas like race cars on racetracks. There'll be designated areas. And when I brought this up a few years ago, I was mocked and people told me I was full of SH1T. And I was like, look, guys, we can't, if we are going to have delivery drones and passenger drones operating in the same airspace, you can't have hobby drones flying around. It's just not feasible. And I think that the way Ireland is moving along, that we're going to end up probably being one of the first countries to find a way to curb it. You can't have people walking into a supermarket, buying a drone, walking outside and flying it if you've got delivery drones. And we have drones following, toy drones and smaller drones following delivery drones around. In one town where the delivery drones were operating, a helicopter kept flying the drones around, and the guy, I believe, lost his helicopter license over it because he was going to cause an accident. So I think that's going to be one thing. Once we get certification, once a few companies get certification on air taxis or passenger drones, whatever you want to call them, I think there's going to be a deluge of people trying to control the airspace above their business or control the airspace above their house. We have already seen it happening here and in the US. And I think that I think that local governments are really, really unprepared on how to manage that. We don't have any legislation for it. Recently at the Paris Olympics, a company called Thales, a French company with a few other groups, had been testing volocopter to fly Olympians to the Olympics by volocopter. And the French, being the arrogance that many of them have, particularly once they become extreme senior, I'm very friendly with French people. My family are married to French girls. I know what they're like. I'm not, nothing I wouldn't say to their face. So they were a week out from the Olympics and they hadn't contacted the local council to ask for permission. And the local council went, no, we're not giving permission to take off from here. And that was that. So they'd sunk tens and tens of millions of euros into this, but they hadn't actually checked with the people who would eventually sign off on it. And I think we're going to see a lot of that happening where councils or local governments start panicking. They don't have a plan in place. Even my own local council hasn't got a plan in place fully yet. And the plan that was written for Dublin City, I think, was absolute toilet paper. I read it and I kind of fell around the place laughing, going, the person who was hired to do it is an extremely knowledgeable drone person with many years of experience. And she's also a barrister. And I think she wrote toilet paper to suit her own needs. So I think that's going to be the biggest problem. How are we going to manage the airspace?
Collaborating and educating and such like that. We do have a question in our chat as far as, I think it circles back to the children's playground, and they said, thank you for presenting today. Who's in charge of repurposing the roads to make the children's play area?
So this is really interesting. There's a group called, a non-for-profit group called A Playful City. There's actually branches of them have spread all across Europe, maybe further. And they started closing housing estates for a day or a weekend, and all the neighbors came out and played. And the timing was actually quite good because post-COVID, a lot of people had been kind of evading each other, and it started creating street parties. Now, I know in the US, street parties are a thing, but in Ireland, it's not really a thing. And it started showing people that actually it's better for the kids to have somewhere safe to play than be going 500 meters down the road to the playground. Why couldn't your estate be the playground? So that was kind of the beginning of it. And a teacher in the high school that I used to attend, he's actually one of the organizers of the group, and he started asking me would I come and take photographs. And not last summer, the summer before, I spent one entire Sunday driving around Dublin, spending 10 minutes at each site. So many of them had started rolling out, closing their estates. So the councils couldn't ignore it anymore. So they started taking areas that had fallen into disrepair and converting them into play areas. So in actual fact, the one I showed earlier is now full of plants, trees, play areas. They painted the ground, hopscotch, snakes and ladders. It's very cool. So, and it seems to be growing at a massive rate. If whoever wants to can email me and I'll make you an introduction to that person quite happily. I know him quite well. A very, very approachable guy. Himself and his wife spend all their spare time trying to get areas to convert into safer play areas.
Awesome. Okay, I did put your information into our chat. Dave, I see you have a question, but I have one more in the chat that I want to address while we're kind of on topic, the one you were just discussing. Marianne asked about, are there going to be drone highways? And what's your take on that?
So I used to say no to that, and now I'm saying yes. Simply because one of the universities in Ireland has been tasked with creating drone highways between the cities. And the European Space Agency with USPA, which is the satellite arm of the European Space Agency, and their unique space program all of their own, they are putting out funding calls for people to figure out a way to use satellite navigation to create corridors, but corridors more like tubes, where a drone will enter into it and will be navigated right through to the other end. So I think that, yes, we will have drone corridors. I actually, do I have a thing? So last minute delivery. Sorry, I'm trying to get my screen to do something that doesn't. I have a new computer. I don't know how to use half of it. I can't get my computer to do what I want it to do. So last minute delivery is currently operating in bubbles where it's a central point in the drones are delivering. But I firmly believe that between cities, drone corridors are going to be required. Like if you have hybrids, vertical takeoff, landing, converting into an aircraft, and you're delivering or connecting between one city and the other, that in time that airspace will potentially become a little bit chock-a-block, and then you'll have to have one direction one way, another direction another. And like in a small country like mine, where I can get in a car and be anywhere in the country by car in 4 hours, as the crow flies at 100 kilometers an hour, you can probably connect every city in 2 hours, less. And I can fly from, technically speaking, right now, I can get in a passenger drone. I can fly to Wales. It's only 100 kilometers, and another 100 and something kilometers to London. So I could actually be in London in 2 or 3 hours, door to door, which totally makes sense. Like at the moment, to get to London, I get up in the morning, I drive through rush hour traffic across the city. It's, as the crow flies, I think it's about 12 kilometers. The road takes me 45 kilometers. I get there, I have to find parking, then take a bus to the airport, wait 2 hours for my flight. The flight to London is only 45 minutes to an hour. And then I have to get out of the airport the other end. It doesn't make sense. It makes far more sense to puddle jump.
Yeah. And I think that whole traffic and the footprint that we're leaving and such all just makes sense. Everyone here I know in Southern California could relate to the traffic and such like that and time frames. So I foresee it. I'd love to see everybody put a comment into the chat. What do you think about it and the corridors? We do have, by the way, when we're talking about deliveries and such like that, I did see that Louise did jump on here. She is here. She was the one that was in that photo with Manna. And so, but Dave, you had a question.
Yeah. Your comment of you can't have recreational drones flying around if you have delivery drones operating. I think that's specific to population density. The overwhelming majority of airspace in the United States is Class G, and it's desolate. And so while the States is at 333 or 30 million people, there are just vast ranges of area that are nothing. And while there are locations where you cannot fly drones around Washington, D.C., the tenderly known freeze, I think it's appropriately named, and also in Manhattan, you cannot fly a drone unless you get a permit, which you can't get a permit. So it's a comical situation. But aside from high density, I don't think that we would work and have been working very hard in direct opposition to that. And yet, you mentioned highways as practicable, and drone highways have had extreme discussion. But it's that would also argue for the continuation of recreational if you have drone highways.
Well, a couple of things there, and you make some good points, but the whole idea behind the drone highway will be just connect cities and stuff. Yeah. It wouldn't necessarily be running through a city. I mean, some of these are just my opinion, and some of them are what I've heard other people say and whatnot. Most of Ireland is Class G airspace, and less than the population of Chicago, the city of Chicago, is spread across our country. So we have vast areas. But how do you? So let's say so if we look at passenger drones, right? When the drink driving laws became prolific in Ireland, small country towns became desolate and are receding. But if you can get a passenger drone from the country to a city or the country to a town, it would change our housing crisis. It would change our planning laws, and then this new type of transport could potentially change how people live. So I know the US is vast, but Europe is similar in size and similar in population density. And I think the US and Europe may not progress in the same way. I know that, say, in the Midwest, your farms, a small farm's 1,000 acres. In Europe, 1,000 acres is a massive farm. So the makeup of your country is very, very different. So it might not happen for a very long time in the US, but I can clearly see in Europe that we're moving towards not denying. So if we move to a UTM system, you can't have rogue drones out there that aren't on the UTM system. It's just not functional. And the US wants to build UTM systems. So you'll have to create some kind of blanket control. Maybe every drone being manufactured will have to have the ability to dial onto the UTM system, but only professional operators will be allowed control in airspace, shall we say. Like, a lot of this has to be ironed out. But if you have a hobbyist that accidentally knocks a drone out of the sky, particularly a passenger drone, that's an automatic 20 years in prison in Europe. So how do you regulate for that without pushing everybody out? But we also need to fix the traffic issues and pollution and all these various things. And do you take the big step or don't you? Your mic's off.
Yeah, sorry, I keep doing that so that we don't get background noise or anything. Sorry.
We have we have had 0 fatalities of electric powered rotary craft by hobbyists since they've been keeping data. And so while the enforcement in Europe is enormous, in the United States, the fatality risk is extraordinarily low to non-existent, to the point where we've been arguing with the FAA that they need to adopt a different metric because fatalities don't work because the denominator is 0. So
but nobody's flying around in passenger drones.
Well, true, but what we're talking about is eliminating, and it's the FAA has stipulated that the same fatality metrics are applied to UAS as they are to AAM. So they're one and the same. From a metrics and a risk perspective.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I just think that if we look at the lifespan of the car, I think we're still in the first year. And I think that a lot has to be uncovered globally. And I just think that it's still very early to tell. But I take on board everything you're saying, like the metric. Like, we have delivery drones flying over houses, they weigh 24.5 kilos, I think. If a Mavic Mini knocks that out of the sky and it comes down in front of a bus and the bus takes everybody out of the bus stop because it swerves, who's at fault? You know
right.
what I mean?
Like, and so we look at it from the perspective of what's the fragility of the object and how much energy is going to be imparted. And we despise the notion of kinetic energy, which says that, if you just worry about the mass of an object, that's sufficient. And if it's a really bad way to look at it, and unfortunately that is the way that the FAA is considering the amount of energy and fatality. But I really appreciate the thoughts. And Desi, I apologize. I don't want to monopolize this discussion.
But I
was going to give you 10 more arguments.
I did put Ian's email address in there. So you would be able to have more collaboration and discussion. All
I'll shut
right.
up. I'll shut up.
So is Carolyn still here? Carolyn, will I skim through these questions, Desi?
Yeah, I am still
Carolyn,
here. Ian,
how you doing?
County Kerry lineage.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
look,
yeah.
I've actually stood at the other end of that bridge behind you. There's the former mayor of San Francisco, who has a VC, has an office at the end of the bridge, and he asked to meet with me when I was in San Francisco. So I know exactly where you're sitting.
This is good, except I'm really in Boston. But thank you. This
Really
screenshot's wonderful.
Have you been to Kerry?
I have. The great grandparents lived there until they took the boat over from the potato famine.
Ron, I hope they sent some money back in the day.
I'll see what I can do. I'll see what I can do.
So you
we're
guys have
on
FAA Part 107. We have a much more layered system.
Oh, do
So
you?
your question was, what's the enrollment number for your course? Are the students earning recreational level training, which is correct? And so we have A1, A3, which is you can fly in Class G airspace in the open category. And that's effectively a hobbyist license. The exam costs 50 euros, and to get your remote ID number is 40 euros. So 90 euros, and you can do that on your own. Anybody can do that. But we're doing that in the morning on the course, so that in the afternoon I can put a drone in their hand. Many of them have flown before, so I'm either taking them and teaching them the legislation, teaching them what they've been doing wrong. But then you have A2, which is a drone for more, or a license, shall we say, for more built-up areas. I'm trying to keep it real simple. And then you have specific category license, which allows you to do more complex operations and operations in Class C airspace. And then further up would be certified. So passenger drones, delivery drones, that type of stuff. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we'll have to chat further because we're about let's see here, 6 days away from the next segment of our bridge inspectors, our highway engineers, and our MBTA staff learning to fly the Skydio 2 Plus and X10s.
Oh, very good. Yeah. What was that last acronym you gave me?
It's the Skydio X10. Their latest.
No, before that you gave me an acronym.
Oh, the Skydio 2 Plus?
No, it doesn't matter.
The MBTA.
You were describing your, yeah.
Oh, that's our metro on the rails.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I've never been to Washington. I've been all over the States.
Okay. Good enough. Thank you so much. I love the accent.
Problem.
I love.
Oh, my accent. Yeah, it's very fancy, isn't it? I grew up in a small house in a fancy neighborhood. Who is in charge of repurposing of the roads to make children's play areas? Is the council? I'm just skimming through these questions here.
As far as my side, we've covered them. So you just brought up, and I know we're out of time because we've got like 3 minutes left here until the top of the hour. But
are we there already?
The things that you meant, yes. So one of the things that you just mentioned, you were talking about the different levels, A1, A2, A3. And one of the things that I have always been so impressed with is that it does require a practical flight assessment. And so
A2 has changed. It used to require it. Now you actually sign a document that states that you trained to a certain point and you're taking the responsibility on yourself. But for specific category license, so this is close as I can remember. It's about 16 hours of online tutoring, a full day of lectures, a very difficult exam, and then you must go and do a very complex flight test. And then you must write your operations manual and all the rest of that. The whole thing, if you were focused on nothing but doing that, it would take you a month. So you're not allowed to apply for a 101 to fly near an airport or anything like that. You need that level of training, and that's European-wide legislation. Each country is doing it slightly different, but it's a European-wide scenario.
Awesome, awesome. All right, with that, we will wrap it up because we really are at the top of the hour. I did put your information into the chat several times, so please save the chat. There's a lot of great conversation happening here. If you want to reach out to him, I put his email in there. If you're not familiar with how to save the chat, click on the 3 buttons, and the top option is to save chat. Still a lot of comments coming into our chat there. Everybody loved the conversation, Ian. Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
for
you all
your
very much.
I love seeing everybody here on our Tuesdays. So we look forward to seeing you next week. All right, everybody, have fun. Have a great week. Get out, fly, and have a good time.
Thanks,
All right.
guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Desi. Thanks,
Thank-
Ian. It was amazing.
Thanks,
Thank
Ian.
you.
Thank
to
you.
see
Thanks,
you.
Sharon. Good to see
Bye,
you.
Sharon.
Bye.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Desi.